Uh, Thank you so much for taking out your time and being here with us for the talk on future of knowledge and the academic library ecosystem by Ms. Karrie Peterson of MIT Libraries, who has been with us for the last 6 weeks as a Fulbright scholar. Believe me, Kerry, these 6 weeks have been enriching for all of us at the library and the institute. So we are delighted to have Ms. Peterson with us this evening, and I, on behalf of every one of you here, profusely thank her for agreeing to give us a talk on this important topic, which is of interest and concern not only to the library professionals, but every academician and researchers. As a few words of introduction about today's speaker, uh, Ms. Karrie Peterson is currently the department head for Liaison, Instruction and Reference Services at the MIT Libraries. The library department supports the faculty, students, and research staff in academic departments, labs, and centers across all disciplines at MIT. Her department is currently working to expand library instructions to empower students with lifelong information skills and the ability to influence policy in the global information ecosystem. She has implemented leadership training and has advanced her liaison program for research and teaching support too. Prior to joining MIT Libraries, Ms. Peterson has also served as a government document librarian, patents and intellectual property librarian, and head of the data and GIS unit. She has worked at several US universities, including University of Pittsburgh, University of California at San Diego, North Carolina State University, and the University of Pennsylvania. Over the course of her career, she has been involved with the digital scholarship initiatives, open science and interoperable data, learning science, and online learning environments. So currently, along with colleagues at the MIT Libraries, Ms. Peterson is working to further the directions laid out in the institute-wide Future of Libraries Task Force report and the library's strategic plan. So with these few words of introduction, may I request Karrie Peterson to come over and deliver her talk. So Karrie, over to you.
Okay, well, can you all hear me? Good. Thank you so much for coming. It is such a pleasure to be here. This is more technology than I've ever had, even at MIT, on my person. And I'm going to talk about the future of knowledge and the academic library ecosystem. And I hope that at the end of my talk, we will actually have a big discussion and perhaps even a debate. I should say some things that surprise you, and maybe some things that you question and you want to argue about. So I hope that's where we'll go. I just want to tell a little bit of a story because I think people might not know why I am here. So I came last March to a conference, a library conference that was organized by Dr. Kumbar, and I was very impressed with the conference. And the opening speakers were Professor Sharon, Professor Jain, and Professor Mehrotra. And when I heard them speak, I was really anxious to come back here and do some kind of collaboration because they talked about values, they talked about not just turning out engineers to contribute to an economy of planned obsolescence. And after that, I tell you, I started to stalk Professor Jain on YouTube. I just wanted to see where he was and what he was saying. And I followed Dr. Kumbar around that conference and I said, please let me come back. And he organized the Fulbright Scholarship, and that's why I'm here. So I'm very grateful to everybody for this invitation back and for the opportunity to be hosted and to work with all of you. I knew that I would learn a lot, but I've learned a lot more than I thought I would. And I knew that I would find so many interesting things here that would change MIT, and it's even more than I thought. So this has been an amazing, life-changing experience for me, and I can't wait to come back. So let me start with my talk. I want to explain the title a little bit. I think everybody knows that all universities around the world have academic libraries. If you're a substantial size university, you have an academic library, and they license resources, and they support student research, and they support faculty research, and they share resources with each other. So academic libraries around the world form a kind of ecosystem. And that ecosystem really was built up in the world of print books and print journal articles. And then everything went online, or many things went online, and the ecosystem adjusted a little bit. So as the knowledge of the world changes, the academic library ecosystem has to change as well. And so my story today is really about the future of knowledge, because the knowledge is going to change a great deal, and that means that the academic library ecosystem really has to step up and think about how is it that the world is going to preserve and share our knowledge. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. I think everybody in this room knows that data has grown exponentially in the last decade, right? We have sensors, we have crowdsourced data, we have big data, we have an enormous amount of data being collected. And anyone who has a smartphone can take 1,000 pictures a month and upload those photographs onto the internet. And those millions of photographs become a data set that would be useful to researchers in almost every discipline. So if all that data is becoming available, what's going to happen to knowledge? Researchers are going to go after that data, they're going to analyze it, they're going to interpret it, and they're going to create new knowledge from that data. So in the same way that data is growing exponentially, knowledge will also grow exponentially. But we are not talking here about journal articles and books. Knowledge is going to take a lot of different forms. It's going to be interactive simulations, it's going to be video, it's going to be oral histories, it's going to be virtual reality, it's going to be data sets, it's going to be code, it's going to be a lot of different things besides just journal articles and print books. So now we have to ask ourselves, how is all that knowledge going to be made available? What is the ecosystem by which we are going to make that human knowledge available? Knowledge is made available not just by technology, because technology also has values built into it. So we make knowledge available based on values and on technology. And that's why I say, do we have a problem with the information ecosystem that we have right now? Is it okay? Or do academic libraries really need to think hard about the future of sharing human knowledge? So this is my controversial point of view, and it's shared by many of my colleagues at MIT. We think that the scholarly information ecosystem is mostly broken. And when I say scholarly information ecosystem, I basically mean human knowledge. We think the system by which we know what we know and how we share what we know and who has access to what we know, we think that system is mostly broken. And we think that academic libraries are in the best position to disrupt what's going on and redesign an information ecosystem that can deal with the way knowledge will change in the future. And that's because in the academy, we have both the technology expertise and we care about values. How are we going to redesign an information ecosystem so that we don't just recreate the thing that exists right now, where some people are privileged and other people do not have access? It's up to academic libraries to take the lead. That's what we believe at MIT Libraries, and that's part of the reason I wanted to come here. So now you know what I'm going to say and what I'm going to talk about, and here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk first about, well, what do we want? What do we want our information ecosystem to deliver for us? The second thing I'll talk about is, why do I say it's broken? Why do I think that the information ecosystem is mostly broken? What does that look like? And the third thing that I will talk about is, what are we going to do about this? What strategies do we need to fix the situation? So that's where we're going to go in about the next half hour. All right, so let me start with, what do we want? I think everybody in this room would agree that we want all of these things. We want a lot more things, but I think we at least want these things. We want open and reproducible science, right? We want the science to be open so that the people who are affected by it can understand it and can use it. And we want reproducible science. We want to make sure that when an experiment has been done, someone else can come along and verify it so that we can trust science. We want interoperable and repurposable data, right? Data is expensive to collect. We need to preserve that data. Let's use that data more than once. Let's let the data that's collected for the evolutionary biologist be used by the researchers who are studying climate change. Let's make sure that our data can be repurposed by other people. We want civic engagement, right? We want people to have some self-determination about how their communities will be run. How will water be delivered? How will smart cities be organized? How will transportation be organized? People who are going to be affected by these things need to be able to understand the knowledge that's out there. And not even just mere access is not enough. It needs to be usable to them no matter what their education level is. That's the way we'll get civic engagement. I think we all want the benefits of big data, AI, virtual reality. We wouldn't be here if we didn't care about those things. Big data, customized medical care, of course we want that. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, we have way too much information in the world. There's no way we're going to discover that information by typing keywords into a search box. We are going to need machine learning to make sense of the information in our world. We want virtual reality. What happens when the best way to learn something is to be in an immersive environment? We need the benefits. Okay, but these things are all fraught, right? That we know, we read the news. There are some things going on with some of this stuff that makes us concerned. This is probably the one where I feel the strongest. We want universal, global education. 20 years ago, when I became a librarian, it was not realistic to talk about universal global education. There weren't enough schools, there weren't enough teachers, it just was not going to happen. In the 20 years since I've been a librarian, we have online education. We have MOOCs, we have the Khan Academy, we have all these ways to deliver education all over the world. It may not be perfect, but it is now feasible to think, how will we educate every single person on the face of the planet? This has happened in the last 20 years of my life. This is a big deal for me. And the last thing on my short list is global collaboration to solve global challenges. All the things that are the problem in our world affect everybody, right? Disease, conflict and violence, refugees, migration, water, climate change. These are not going to be solved by some small number of researchers from elite institutions. This will require global collaboration. If we want all these things, basically that's a lot of different ways of saying we need to share equally in the benefits of human knowledge. That's what we want the information ecosystem to deliver. Is it delivering that to us? Let's take a look. My answer is mostly not. My answer is the information ecosystem right now feels broken in almost every one of those ways that I said, what do we want? How can we do universal education in a MOOC or something like that when you cannot put, you cannot license materials and put them in a MOOC because your license says you can have that for 35 students on the MIT campus, but you cannot share that with 200,000 people. That's copyright and business models that are preventing us from doing universal education. That's a broken information ecosystem to me. How can we do teaching and learning in the information ecosystem that we have right now? So you're a faculty member, and you've got a textbook, and it's an online textbook, and you want to change that textbook so that it's customized a little bit for the students in your class that are struggling. But you cannot do that. DRM has locked that thing down. Copyright says you mustn't mess with that. You can't do teaching and learning, even though you would know how, even though you would be willing to make it better, you're prevented from making your teaching and learning better. Research is impeded. It's so inefficient for researchers from the beginning of their data collection. all the way through managing their data, all the way through compliance with their funder, all the way through analyzing their data, collaborating with their global research team, doing the collaborative writing, and then getting the thing peer-reviewed and published. Every little bit of that is a different, belongs to a different company, is a different kind of digital platform by which the researcher has to operate. They're typing here, they're putting something there, they're submitting something here. It's very inefficient, right? The economic model that we have for the research infrastructure means that none of these pieces play nicely with each other. So you're typing in this bucket and typing in that bucket. Innovation in libraries is very much undermined. And I know the library staff will all agree with me about this. When we license resources from a commercial publisher, we have to present it on our website the way they want it presented. We can't change the way it's presented. If they want to put a little thing on the side that says pay $20 for this article, we can't even take that away. We spend so much time in the library just trying to make the different systems play nicely with each other that we're not really doing the job of librarians. We're just trying to make sense of a very fragmented world that's created by proprietary business models. It's very hard for us to innovate forward when we're just trying to fix a fragmented mess. I hardly need to mention that privacy on the net is demolished. I mean, just from the library point of view alone, right? We're licensing all these databases and resources. Libraries care a lot about privacy. We think that freedom to read requires privacy. If you want to come in and read something in the library, no one should be looking over your shoulder to see what you're reading. You should have freedom to read what you need to read. So we care a lot about privacy. But the minute we send any of our students through our website off to a publisher's website, we no longer have control about what data that publisher is collecting about you. And we are unable to be transparent with students about what kind of privacy that they're able to have. So we're espousing a value towards privacy that we cannot do. And of course, there's a gross inequity in who has access to knowledge. If you cannot pay, so much of what we need to know is behind a paywall. If you cannot pay, you don't have access. So, what should libraries do about this? Is there anybody here who thinks they would like to live in the world whose values are designed by Elsevier and Google? Right? I don't think so. We all know that Elsevier is putting everything behind the paywall. I have many things to say about the publishers, right? We all know they're putting their information behind the paywall. They are stymieing innovation, right? You have to pay. You have to license, you have to pay. So what is the model? Research is done on the university. It's written and peer-reviewed for free. We give it to the publishers. Then we have to buy it back, and we can do very limited things with that information. And most of the publishers are working that way for a long time. In fact, it's always fun for me to encounter somebody who doesn't understand that's the business model. There was a businessman from Silicon Valley who's been eating in the faculty mess, and we were explaining the system to him, and he was like, the publisher doesn't give you any money? We're like, no, the publisher does not give us any money. We give him the stuff, and we buy it back. He was astonished. No businessman would do that. So we don't want the world of Elsevier. We create the knowledge. We need to keep it in our own institutional repository and have control over the way that we allow people to do discovery, over who gets to see it, over how it can be used. We need to innovate with digital information in a big way. But I'm also going to talk about Google, right? We don't really want the values of Google. Oh, sorry, yeah.
I was just wondering, I thought I as a researcher have a right over my content, so I can always put it on my website.
It depends on the agreement that you've made with the publisher. So, because of our
You do an NDA with the publisher? Whatever that, I cannot put my stuff online?
You can put your stuff online, but if you have made an agreement with a publisher, very often what they will want is control over the copyright. So this is traditional.
I own the copyright, or the university owns the copyright to the work.
Okay, we should save this probably for the
Sure,
discussion
okay,
because
sure.
copyright's really complicated. Yeah.
Generally, if you write for a publisher, in the fine print, you sign away the copyright. And you may have right to license, or you may have the right to reproduce it in limited forms, but you cannot at all reproduce it in its entirety. I say that as a publisher. We have to do a lot of this legal work. That's separate. There are lots of journals that are open access. We are open access. But there are many that are completely proprietary.
And you're right. I'm telling the worst possible story. So there are ways that when you sign an agreement with a publisher, you will have more or less ability to do some things. But it's true what Atul said is from at least historically and traditionally, most of the publishers will ask you to give the copyright to them. Okay, so we should talk more about that in the discussion. Okay, but I also want to talk about Google. So people love Google, right? Why do we need libraries? We have Google. Google can find everything for us. Let's think about that for a minute, okay? It is not the mission of Google to share the world's information. It is not their mission. What is Google's mission? Google's mission is to put something out there that you want and then collect data about how you move around in that world. They want to collect your data. Google wants to turn you into the commodity. They're going to collect your data, and they're going to sell that to the corporation so that the corporation can sell you something. Okay, I see a lot of heads nodding. People get this dynamic, right? Okay, it doesn't mean Google is evil, but it means they have a different mission. How much does Google care about making information accessible to people who don't have any money? That data is not useful to them. They can't sell that data to the corporation because the corporation can't sell any of their products to poor people. So already, Google's idea of discovery of information is skewed by who they think their customers are, who they want data about. Okay, I'm not saying Elsevier is evil. I'm not saying Google is evil. I am saying they have a different mission than the academic library. And that's why we should care. So if we don't want technology, and they have good technology, but we don't want their values. And if we don't want an information ecosystem that's built by Elsevier and Google, then who is going to do it? And I think it's academic libraries. We can be the people who care about efficient discovery for all. I don't care what your education level is. I don't care how much money you have. I want you to have access to human knowledge. So that's one thing. And we are the ones who can build a research infrastructure that helps researchers be far more productive than they're able to be in the world as it is now. So I'm going to say that it's up to the libraries to do this disruption and redesign. And by disrupt, I don't mean, you know, wild dogs making a mess. I do mean just make it clear to people that we have to make a change and then working together in an organized fashion to get to a redesign. Okay. But there's always a wait a minute. So the wait a minute here is we still use a lot of things in the information ecosystem the way it exists now, right? We depend on it for a lot of things. And I would say, my examples here is IITGN, but it's the same at MIT, it's the same at any university. We care about publishing in the top journals. There's a lot of reasons why we want to do that. First of all, you want to demonstrate the productivity of your school, right? Look, we are productive. We are getting things published in the top journals. Everybody cares about that. We want to attract really good students and faculty so that they see what we're publishing in the top journals and they're like, wow, I want to work there. You know, that's a really vibrant intellectual place. I want to work there. We want to get our researchers known. Look, we publish in the top journals. We're going to get that funding proposal. Our grant's going to be accepted. That's going to help our researchers get even higher, right? You know, the more you know, the more you can know. So we want these things from the existing ecosystem. What are we going to do about that? You know, because if we think the ecosystem is broken in a lot of ways, are we just stuck? I think we're at a crossroads. And I say this for many, many institutions. We have to make a choice, and we have to be smart, and we have to be strategic. We can adopt the West, we can adopt the idea on the left. Well, you know, we didn't create this mess. That was really created by all those elite institutions. And actually, many of you may not know this, but the reason we have to pay so much for top journals is because librarians invented the impact factor. And once the impact factor goes up and everybody's like, I must have that journal, the price also goes up. That bad dynamic was actually invented by librarians. So you can say, okay, well, they created the problem. Let the West fix it. We're just going to do the pragmatic thing and keep trying to publish in the top journals. That's the argument on the left. Or we can go to the argument on the right. And this is really what I hope we will have discussion and debate about. This is what I care. I believe it's possible for the less enfranchised people to leapfrog past the elite institutions. I believe that that's possible. To leapfrog past, you know, lots of libraries in the you know, US and Europe, you know, they're understanding open access and open by default. They understand all this stuff. But I believe it's possible for the problem to be understood better here and for better leadership to come from a place where you just understand more of the problem. Because you're not an elite institution yet, you know, because you have had to grapple with fewer resources. So I don't have really great, I mean, this really is just an opinion at this point, and I don't have really great evidence, but I have some thoughts about why I think this academic library could really perform a lot of leadership, not just in India, but for the world. A lack of resources really forces people to use their ingenuity, right? You can't afford to sit in meetings all day. You can't afford to spend money on things that don't go anywhere. There's lots of ingenuity coming from a lack of resources. The Design for $1 billion that was here recently, that's a refrain I've heard quite a lot. Include, you know, if you're not going to do it for 1 million people, you know, what are we talking about here? So, you know, a rich place can afford to put lots of effort into a workshop that serves 5 or 7 students. But a place with fewer resources, we got to figure out a way to do a better job here. We got to figure out a way to do a better job. That's the ingenuity I'm talking about. So think about designing for $1 billion. If that's your goal, you're already working at global scale in a way that some of the elite institutions are not. They're just focused on their own campus. Wow, we got 12 students in our workshop. But if you're designing for $1 billion, you're already solving a global problem because there's a big population on the planet. And another thing that I would say, like all these things that might seem like burdens or problems are actually a source of strength. So think about the multilingual situation. So since I've been here for 6 weeks, people say, oh, well, you know, we have so many languages here. So does the world. So anything that we solve here in the library that has to do with addressing a multilingual problem is instantly available to the rest of the world to adopt. So things that seem like a challenge here, actually, if you overcome them, that make it absolutely useful to the rest of the world. And the last thing I would say is values are very powerful. That has so much to do with why I wanted to come to this IIT. Values make people happy. People who have to work in places where it's not a good fit with their values, they're not happy people. You will attract so many people simply by working in harmony with your values. So these are the reasons why I think this library could really provide leadership. I think you understand the problem. I think you understand more of the problem of the information ecosystem by virtue of the fact of having less resources. You don't get to play in a certain way because you cannot afford the $90,000 proprietary research infrastructure product. So you understand more of the problem. That's not a solution for the planet. We have to have a different solution, and that's where leadership comes from. We have to have a different and better solution. So just reminding that anything that we do about the information ecosystem has to solve these problems which many other institutions face. Where's our productivity? How do we attract top quality students and faculty for our intellectual atmosphere? How do we help our researchers get known so that they get the benefit of grant funding? So anything we do around the information ecosystem also has to take these problems into consideration. And I don't believe this is so understood really deeply in the conversations that are happening among elite institutions. I believe this problem is better understood here. Okay, so let's talk about what can we do. What can we do to redesign, to start redesigning an information ecosystem so that it addresses all those things that I said make it look broken? And so open content by default. Let's not make people pay for human knowledge that's being produced by researchers on university campuses. And when I say open access is just a start, I really mean that, I think I mentioned before, that we keep the research on our campus, we put it in our institutional repository, and with all that digital information under our control, we can think of lots of ways to do discovery, to do text mining, to create data sets. We can use that information so much better if it's controlled by us and not by a publisher. So one thing I should point out here is I've put some of these strategies in bold and in yellow. And those are the things that I think come directly from my 6 weeks here. Those are things that I understand better now than I did 6 weeks ago. Those are the things that I would put back into the conversation about changing the information ecosystem and the ways that I think IITGN understands the problem better. So we're going to have repositories, sure, but if you come up with if you know, the people in Europe and America and Australia come up with a repository structure that's unaffordable by most universities, what problem have they solved? We have to have repositories being equitably established. That means technology, that means help, because look, if we have a repository at MIT, that's just MIT stuff. You know, every university has to be putting their research in a repository so that we can build a discovery system that goes across all these buckets. So all these places have to have a repository. We can't just have repositories for a few of the Western and elite universities. Like, everybody has to have a repository. How will we do that? So I put that into the conversation. It's not just, well, you should get a repository. Oh, sorry, you can't afford that. Everybody has to have one. We have to have government policies that incentivize people to make their data open, to share their knowledge. We need discovery features we need discovery that features research from the global south. Okay, so we've done all this cataloging and we've done all this discovery from elite institutions, right? But if we want there to be some equity, then the ones that are less visible, often from smaller institutions, often from newer institutions, those things have to be pumped up so that research can be seen, because that's an unusual perspective. We've got all these people from elite institutions sharing a lot of the same perspective. We need to pump up the voices from places that are less mainstream so that we can really understand what human knowledge really is all over the world and not just from a small segment. And then the last thing on this list for making content open is OER stands for Open Educational Resources, right? We have to write our own textbooks, for example. We have to make our own simulations. It's expensive to do those things. So if those things are always authored by elite institutions, they will always have that perspective. So we have to find a way to make sure that open educational resources get authored by people from all regions of the planet. So the things in yellow are the things that I specifically think, these are the reasons why a place like this library could take leadership, because they understand these parts of the problem that is less well understood in elite institutions. Okay, more strategies. So we talked a little bit about research infrastructure. If knowledge is going to change and researchers are going to be using all this data, what is the thing that they need? They need a research infrastructure that goes all the way from the data collection all the way to the publishing and deposit in the institutional repository. And those things have to have interchangeable components. And here's what I mean by that. So I have something that's managing my data. I have something that allows me to do the analysis of my data. I have something that allows me to work with my research team that's all over the world. I have something that allows me to do peer review. Wait, I don't like this thing. I don't like this part that does the peer review. I'm going to take this part out. and I'm going to go to a different company and buy a cheaper and better one, okay? But I don't want that to break my system. This thing has to play together nicely, okay? If each piece of the research infrastructure is designed by a different company, those things will not play together nicely. What we need is totally modular, interoperable research infrastructure. The academic libraries don't have to build all that infrastructure, but they have to set the standard. They have to say, we're not buying your product unless, if we don't like it, we can take it out and put something else in, and the whole system will still work. And the reason for that is, it's the idea of being locked down to one brand. You know, the company will say, oh, if you want it to work nicely from A to Z, you need to buy all our products because all our products work together. And then what happens? You're locked in and the price goes up. That's not a good situation. So what we have to do is not build all the information, the research infrastructure, but we have to set the standards so that anything that we do buy allows us to change the pieces in and out. We also have to think about measuring research impact differently. I mentioned the idea that the impact factor in the high top journals, you know, creates a problem. There's a lot of ways that research that's done on universities has impact. And you all know, just publishing an article and measuring the citations, you can game that system. That's a system for some kind of impact, but it's not the social impact that we really, really care about. And who is going to design that system where we can really tell what kind of impact our research has? It's not going to be Elsevier. Elsevier is motivated to keep you buying their journals. They're not going to innovate here. They're not going to come up with a new idea about how research impact should be measured. Who's going to do it? We're going to have to do it on our own campuses. And then, as I said, we want the infrastructure to be controlled, the standards to be set by academia, and it has to be constructed via equality principles. And that's what I was saying earlier about, you know, you can design the perfect repository or the perfect, you know, the perfect infrastructure for archives, but if it's not affordable by everybody, then you've just designed something particularly for one tiny audience. So again, the things in yellow are the things that I think really matter here, are well understood here, and can create some leadership in the conversation that's happening among all academic libraries. Okay, a few more things about the infrastructure. So, as we said, if we're going to discover information in a world where there's too much information, we're not going to do it by typing keywords into a search box. We're going to need machine learning, but we all know machine learning right now is not entirely transparent, especially if it's done by a corporation. And what basis do we have for ensuring that the algorithms that are made are amenable to our criticism? Like right now, there's a lot of stuff in the news. Wait, your algorithm is racist, you know, and people are like, oh, okay, let me fix that. But that's not control. That's just, come on, fix. That's protest, right? So we've got to have discovery systems that we know are amenable to criticism and that are transparent to us. We need internet governance that fosters equality. As far as I understand, there was a pretty good decision made here about net neutrality in India, but I believe that the bad decision that the United States is making right now is going to have an effect on a lot of countries. So we're going to have to work globally on that, and we're going to have to be far more vocal. Privacy needs to be the norm. We already talked about that a little bit. And then usability of information in every sense of the word. I don't care what your education level is. You should have a discovery system that works for you. So if you're a 10-year-old and you want to learn about plasma fusion, you're going to use this discovery system. You know, if you're a Nobel Prize winner, you're going to use a different discovery system, okay? Or even for me, I care a lot about how is the tax money of the United States. I, as a citizen, how is my tax money being spent in the United States? I can go to the government website and I can find the US budget, but I can't use it. I don't understand it. Just mere access is pointless. We are going to have infrastructure that allows us to make information usable, or people won't use it. It'll just be there. Okay, so I've said we need to make content open, and I've said we need to do lots of things about the infrastructure by which the information ecosystem operates. And the last thing I want to talk about is skills and information skills. We, here at IIT and also at MIT, we have the students who have really high expertise in technology. They know lots of things that the average citizen does not know. So if they go and they look at a government website and they say, wait, they're presenting everything as PDFs. I can't do very much with that. They can be critical about the information ecosystem because they have better expertise and knowledge that average citizens don't have. They go to the government website, they assume PDFs is all there is, this is the best we can do, I have to just take this, right? But our students can really be the spokespeople and the advocates for the average citizen. And we need them to do that. But how are they going to do that if we don't talk to them while they're getting educated about how the information ecosystem works? If they're not caring about that, if they're not thinking, this is something where I can really make the world a better place by thinking about the information ecosystem. So we got to teach skills. And I want to say that it is very expensive to teach students information skills. You have to have people who understand learning. How do people learn? You have to have people who can follow the information ecosystem and have a lot of knowledge. It's an expensive proposition. So again, we don't want to be like, well, in an elite institution like MIT, they can hire 5 people to do that. But here, it's much tougher. How will we do that? Well, we are going to find ways to do it with fewer resources and using all the knowledge of the students, and we're going to leverage the expertise of the students, and that will be a solution that could be used all over the world. You don't have to mimic the model that they do at MIT or some other fancy place. We can find a better solution here, and it will come up with better results. Because the best way to learn something is to turn around and teach it to somebody else. And I think also it requires that the elite institutions understand we're going to have to do some student exchanges here. We're going to have to talk about information skills across the elite institutions and the institutions that are historically less resourced so that we can understand the problem better. I think we also have to help our students send solutions into the world. And this is something that I do see at MIT and I'm very proud of. There's a part of MIT called the Civic Media Lab, and that's almost all they do is send a product into the world that will help people use information better. So they have products where they say, okay, let's help people just understand while they're searching the web, that's probably fake news, this is better quality information. So that it's not a workshop, it's like a platform that you use while you're searching the web. It's a product that's out there that people don't have to be educated about, it just works for them. They also came up with something, my favorite example about the budget, they also came up with something that helps ordinary citizens in Brazil understand their own budget. So they're like, wow, they were supposed to repair that bridge and they never did it. And there's a feedback loop and they can do something about it. So we have to help our students engineer some solutions that just disrupt and show people how the information ecosystem has to change. And then the last thing here I think has really taken off at this school with the writing studio, right? We need improved public discourse around science and engineering. And the voices of people all around the global south have to be heard loud and clear about how the information ecosystem is not working. And that means that our technical people, our science and engineering students, have to be able to communicate with average citizens. They have to have the writing skills and the talking skills so that they can explain these highly technical and specialized things to everyday citizens. And that, I think, has really taken off here with the writing studio. So this is my last slide, and I just want to say again, where will the leadership come from? I'm very proud of MIT. I think MIT is making big strides in the United States, pushing the discussion about social justice and what the future of the library needs to be. I'm very proud of MIT. But I also am very respectful of the fact that we have a lot of money, we have a lot of opportunity, we're in an elite institution. In some ways, we're going to have blind spots. We're not going to see the problem as broadly as it will be seen by people who do not have those resources. And leadership from people who can see more of the problem is very, very important. So my basic question here, and I hope we have some time to discuss, is where's the leadership going to come from? Is it going to come from the elite institutions who have plenty of money but maybe skewed values? They think of solutions that cost too much money for many people? Or is it going to come from people who have the same technical expertise, less money, but more inclusive values? So thank you for listening, and I hope we have some time for comments and questions.